So in 2024, is Arthur Smith going to be your head football coach for your team?
Well, when we're committed to Coach Smith. We're going to play these last 3 games. We play them to win them, and we'll let the season play out and go from there. Obviously, this has not been the kind of year we expected, and you would hear that first from Coach Smith. You'd hear it from our fans, you hear it from our players. So we understand that. We understand the challenges. So at the end of the year, we'll assess where we are and go from there.
Welcome in, Falcons fans. Your boy Bryce Lewis back at it again for more coverage of the Atlanta Falcons in the season that has been. And obviously, to continue this, we have a special guest with us today, Greg Auman, Fox Sports NFC South reporter for the company. Also used to be with the Athletic and Tampa Bay Times for covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Welcome into the show, Greg. How are you?
Doing well, Bryce. Thanks for having me on.
I'm glad you're doing well, man. And there's only thing is that Falcons aren't particularly doing well right now, and we're going to talk about that today. A lot has happened, especially after this past week and just the entire season in general, and we're just going to go ahead and dive right into it. I just want to get your thoughts. So first thing I'm going to ask you is, coming into the season, a lot of people felt like the Falcons were one of the teams that were projected to win this division, a division that was considered to be weak this year. They made those free agent acquisitions. There was a lot of talent added. The only big question I think a lot of people had was Desmond Ridder at quarterback, because everybody didn't know what to expect from him. But for the most part, you look at this roster and think, oh, this is a pretty good roster. Now we're sitting here and their playoff chances are hanging on by a thread. What have you seen or thought of this Falcons season so far? Has it been what you expected? Has it been wildly not what you expected? And then whatever answer that is, why do you think it's gone that way?
Yeah, I think they've kind of been what I thought they would be. It's one of those things where it probably speaks well of things that it's a disappointment and they're a game out of first with 3 weeks left. Obviously, Ridder was a question mark going into the year. Defensively, I think they probably exceeded expectations. I think Ryan Nielsen's done a great job there. The money spent, whether it's Bates, whether it's Campbell, Ellis, Onyemata, they've done really well to take those parts and really improve. So that side of the ball, I think, has done very well. Offensively, I think they've dealt with a lot of injuries on the offensive line. I think that definitely puts an asterisk on anything the last couple of weeks. But it's one of those where the offense as a whole, you think about Arthur Smith being an offensive coach, you think about the draft capital that's been put into top 10 picks, the skill position players the last 3 years, it kind of set the bar a lot higher than they've been at. So I think they knew that. I think it wasn't like they went in thinking Des Ridder is the best quarterback in the NFL. I just think they thought he was a starter and somebody they could build around. So his inability to curtail those turnovers and limit his mistakes, especially in the red zone, is probably what's kind of scuttled him this season. Because, you certainly saw consistently how well he could make plays. Their games, you think about the Falcons-Bucks game and the way they closed that out, the first one, I should say. But again, Sunday, it's not the way you want to see a season fall out of contention, is to lose to a 1-win team that you hold out of the end zone without a touchdown. It's like if you keep your opponent from scoring a touchdown in the NFL, it's about a 90% success rate. So to that extent, it's tough. And it's one of those where they're only a game out, but unfortunately for them, they've gone from a team that was 3-0 in the division to now a team that's 3-2 in the division. And a lot of the tiebreakers start working against them. So now for them to get in, they need a lot of help. They need the Saints to stumble in Los Angeles. They need the Jags to lose to the Bucks to lose to the Jaguars on Sunday. If those kind of dominoes start to fall, then it gets interesting again. But right now, they feel like a team that's on the outside looking in, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I think, like I said, it's just been a big disappointment. A lot of fans, especially after losing to the Panthers, were very disappointed. A lot of angry fans wanting now, even with 3 games left, change from the head coaching position. Arthur Smith has been under a lot of fire from the questionable handling of the quarterback position, giving Ridder the job without any competition, not having a quarterback coach. People have been questioning his play calling, though, because it doesn't seem this team has an identity maybe like they had in the last couple of years, maybe. Just a lot of things have been questionable. And so from everything that you've seen from your end, what is your assessment of Arthur Smith? And do you think if they don't make the playoffs, do you see him keeping his job after the season?
Yeah, I think there's still a little wiggle room there. I think you have a much more patient owner in Arthur Blank than some of the other teams in this division. But I mean, I think if they win 2 out of 3 and they're 8-9, and now they've taken a step forward after 2 7-10 seasons, there's not many coaches that can have 3 straight losing seasons in today's NFL and keep their jobs. This is a situation where you could, if you see that microscopic step forward, and you still feel like, I mean, the main question is I think they know now that Des Ridder is probably not their guy moving forward. So you have to ask yourself, if they're going to put a high draft pick or they're going to put big money into a quarterback, is Arthur Smith the guy you think can get the most out of that quarterback? And if you answer that as yes, then maybe he does come back. If they lose Sunday, if they, are 7-10 for a third year in a row, that's not a lot of momentum. That's missed opportunities. That's falling short in a division that was kind of there for the taking. So even with an owner like Arthur Blank, who I think is fairly long-term focused and patient, makes you wonder. I think he would easily have pause to wonder, is this the guy we want to hand another quarterback to? And then if it doesn't work, you get in that unfortunate thing where now the rookie quarterback, it's kind of like what Carolina had this past year, where you need your coach and your quarterback in sync. And if you don't have that, you're restarting his clock with a second year in the NFL. He's got a new coach and a new offense, and that can really set guys back sometimes. So I think the larger question to ask is, if you're starting anew with a fresh quarterback, is Arthur Smith the guy that can get the most out of that guy?
Yeah, and I think people seeing how things have gone with Desmond this year. Listen, Desmond isn't obviously the most talented guy. Did not come out the draft having the highest ceiling, but this entire offense feels like they have not reached expectations as a whole. Obviously, like you said, injuries have played a part in that, but Kyle Pitts hasn't still been maybe the Kyle Pitts from his rookie year. It seems like he still could be dealing with an injury that he's not 100% from. Drake London has had games where he'll explode and then he'll only have one catch the next week. Bijan was good at the start, then went through a period where he really wasn't getting the ball. Now he's getting the ball now after people say Arthur was bullied into getting him the ball. And then Desmond, your overall assessment of Desmond is my next question. Just what have you seen from him specifically? There's some people say you see flashes sometimes of, okay, that's a pretty good throw. But then, like you said, the turnovers are just like, that's killing the team, that's killing momentum, that's killing drives.
Yeah, I think Atlanta took a leap in trusting him to be their guy. And this past offseason, they had so much cap space. Everybody thought they might trade for Lamar. Everybody thought they might make a big signing with Carr or Garoppolo or one of these big names. And they didn't draft him. They could have had a quarterback there too. So to bypass all those other options and show you have faith in a kid that you've only had 4 games with, and maybe not a big sample size, was impressive. Was not how most NFL teams operate. And then you think about this. Des Ridder had a lot of good stuff around him. You think about 3 top 10 picks. You think about the money they spent to keep Lindstrom, to extend Lindstrom, to keep McGarry. Drew Dahlman has emerged really well this year. So everything around him is in place, and it's one of those where you want your offense to be better than the sum of the parts, if you will. And instead, what you had is just kind of uneven play by everyone. You saw Drake London have a huge game recently, where it's like, wow, that's you get as many catches, as many yards as he has. And if anything, you kind of sit back and wonder, why couldn't he do that more consistently? Why can't he get touchdowns more often? I don't think Kyle Pitts is the player he was his rookie year. I don't think he's physically at a point where he can play the way he did there. And that's unfortunate. I think he at least has that asterisk. Drake London's just not really getting used, especially in the red zone, the way you expect a top 10 draft pick to be used. Bijan Robinson, again, so much promise, so much excitement going into the year, and flash and individual plays that were showing you exactly why he goes so high and why you think, oh, wow, the league has devalued running back so much, but here's an absolute star, just an electric playmaker. And then there are other games where he kind of disappears. Sunday against the Panthers, it's a bad fumble and then doesn't see the ball again. And I think he had 14 yards total on 8 touches or whatever it was. So, again, there are good backs that can go disappear for a day, but I think with all 3 of those, I think you've just seen such uneven week-to-week contributions that you just wish they could find a way to use them more consistently. It's one thing where it's like, gosh, you don't know who's going to go off on a given day, and it might be, maybe it's Pitts that goes for 120 and 2 touchdowns. And instead, it's just there are days where none of the three are really doing too much. And they're probably too talented a team to have that happen as often as it has this season.
Yeah, and I think, especially with that talent, like I said, you just expect more from the offense. And I think that's why some people reflect and kind of put the blame a little bit on Arthur Smith, because he is the offensive play caller for the team. So, if he's not getting his best players the ball, that reflects on him. And obviously everybody knows about the rivalry they say he has with fantasy football. How he's just like, we're just trying to win. I'm not worried about that. So that I always say hasn't helped him in the public eyes as well. But I'm gonna ask you like a hypothetical here. So let's just say hypothetically they do fire Arthur Smith. The season doesn't end up the way it does. Do you see Terry Fontenot also staying? Some people have asked, because they know Arthur Smith, or it's been said Arthur Smith has some power in the organization to make certain decisions. So is this a situation where you've accumulated a lot of talent? This team is not a lack of talent. So, and that could be reflection of Terry. Do you see them cleaning house completely, or do you see maybe Arthur and maybe some coaches? Because also Falcons fans would be worried if they fire Arthur Smith, Ryan Nielsen will go, and he's been done such a great job with the defense.
Yeah, I don't know. Honestly, it's a good question. And then I think, for Fontenot, I think so much of what they've done is get out of all the cap hell they were in, shedding Matt Ryan's contract, Julio Jones. This was really the first year they could really operate. You think about taking the restrictor plates off and just being able to go out and spend and be active. It wasn't always the case for that. So to see that those decisions went well, I mean, Bates seems like a really good signing. Nielsen, I mean, probably the best thing about this team right now, you'd say, is how well the defense has played under a first-time coordinator and the pieces he brought in from New Orleans. You see that New Orleans defense misses him probably and misses some of the key parts, especially in terms of sacks. I mean, you think about it, I think the three guys in Animata and Ellis and I'm blanking on a third, but they had like 16 sacks with the Saints last year, and their replacements in New Orleans have had like 5. So it's one of those where I think they did really well there. And like you said, I think a lot of Falcons fans, it's hard to bring in a coach and say, hey, by the way, you got to take this guy as part of this job. I think Atlanta will be a job that is more coveted than most openings right now. They have a top 10 draft pick right now. They have some cap flexibility, very little in the way of free agents to worry about losing. So I think there's more flexibility. There's the freedom. I think with a lot of these NFL jobs, the first thing you start with is, what are you dealing with at quarterback? So like Carolina right now, if you like Bryce Young, that's a good job, but you're also really tied to him, maybe even beyond next year. New Orleans, if you don't like Carr, is like, wow, okay, you're kind of stuck with him for a year. So little cap flexibility. You're not going to be able to really bring in, you can't do like the Falcons did. You can't bring in 3 starters from a coordinator and where he played. So maybe it's not as good as Chicago might be with 2 high draft picks, the talent, the improved defense. But I think Atlanta would be a job that would be in the upper half of the vacancies that come open this offseason. And that helps. I mean, that means you don't have to overpay to get a coach you want, and it's one of those where you can make maybe one of the more exciting hires of this cycle if you choose to do that. I don't know whether they trust their GM to do that, or whether you want to start anew with fresh face. I don't know how they see that. I don't know if they think, again, it's one of those where they have the talent they have because they keep picking in the top 10 in the draft. So that's not a process you want to perpetuate too long. And if they do it again, and it's very possible they have another top 10 pick and they put another skill position, high level player like a quarterback into a top 10 pick, eventually you have to see the fruits of those labors. And I don't think they've seen that yet. So I don't know where I think a coaching change is very possible if they don't do well. I don't know if they make front office changes as quickly. I don't know that.
Yeah, okay, that's fair. That's fair. I mean, yeah, I think that's something that it's just going to be interesting. Obviously, we still have to see how the season ends. Like I said, there's still multiple games left for everything. Now, since you cover the NFC South, you've been able to cover the wackiness, sometimes bad football, just all types of things that the NFC South has been this year. And so at this point, I guess, what is your feeling on the NFC South as a whole? Who do you think is going to come out on top in this division?
Yeah, I mean, I think the momentum is certainly with Tampa Bay right now. They've won 3 in a row. The Saints have won two in a row as well, but that's also against lesser opponents, and I think that changes things. So for the Bucs to go to Green Bay and beat a good Packers team, that could all change Sunday with the Jaguars coming to town. If Jaguars are kind of a must-win kind of situation almost, so that could change things. But right now, they're probably playing their best ball right now. They were a 4-7 team, and not a whole lot of things going right. And the offense has clicked. I think the defense has played well, has closed out games in a way they didn't against Atlanta, against Houston, and games like that. So it's kind of theirs for the taking. I mean, even if they lost Sunday, if they beat the Saints on New Year's Eve, it's kind of their division still. But again, this is a team that's had lots of violent ups and downs. I think some of the Bucs losses have been to elite NFL teams like the Niners and the Eagles and the Bills and the Lions. And then there's others that are kind of middling losses where it's like, oh, you lost to the Falcons, you lost to the Texans, you lost to the Colts. Those are all in that same middle tier that Tampa's in. And now to finish the season, the Jaguars are very much that team again. The Saints are very much that team again. They get to finish against Carolina. That really should be a win. But if they just even split the next two, they're kind of in control there. New Orleans goes to Los Angeles on a Thursday night. Not an easy turnaround. Two teams with the same record, very much fighting for the same kind of slim postseason chances. So that's tough. If they can do that on a short week, New Orleans has had to do Thursday turnarounds twice this year. The first time they lost to the Jags in a game, they rallied back and had tied late. So it's close. It's one of those where if New Orleans can win that, it really sets up a lot being on the line for Bucs Saints on New Year's Eve in Tampa. But if they don't, they're kind of on the outside looking in too.
Yeah. And like you said, it's a lot of things can change. I know, like, if the Falcons were able to win this Sunday against the Colts, I mean, they played the Saints the last week of the season. And, I've always said that I feel like basically the Falcons need Tampa Bay to lose because they're the main team that has the tiebreaker on them. So you don't want to finish with the same record with them. Saints, since you beat them once all this season, if you beat them again, that you pretty much have the tiebreaker on them. So,
Right.
A lot of stuff could still happen, but like you said, Tampa Bay has a tough stretch. Like you said, they play Jacksonville, and they play, I think, the Saints next week after that.
Right.
So that's the two major games for them. Do you think that potentially after this season, we could potentially have 3 new head coaches in the NFC South? Because the Panthers already fired Frank Wright. They're going to have a new one. Smith, we talked about, might, depending on how the season ends, change. Saints, if they don't make the playoffs, kind of falling short of expectations again. Dennis Allen I know certain Saints fans, from what I've seen, are not the happiest with him. And then I would assume whoever wins the division would head coach would stay. Todd Bowles, maybe at one point when they were 5-7, maybe looking at that now, kind of control their destiny. Do you see potentially 3 out of 4 head coaches, maybe, or 3 out of 4 teams having new head coaches going into next season?
Yeah, I mean, it's very possible. Like the only kind of get out of jail card is to win the division. I mean, I think that definitely helps. If you hang a banner, especially if you win late to win a division, it's hard to fire that guy. And it's not to say that it can't be disappointing. I mean, if you win the division, I don't think it's going to be an 8-9 champ again. But if you win with a losing record, it's still not inspiring a ton of confidence. If you win at 8-9 and then get crushed in the first round of the playoffs, that's still, it's a consolation to win that division, but it's not great. So no, I think the only way to really feel safe for any of these 3 surviving coaches right now is to win this division. And again, if you miss the cut and you're 9-8, you're probably sticking around. If you miss the cut and you're 7-10 again, or 6-11, as the case might be, it's not a good look. I mean, this was a bad division. So if you have a bad division and a bad record, that's not a good combination. But I don't know. I go in expecting at least 2 out of 4, and 3 if things don't go right here in the next 3 weeks.
Yeah, and that kind of sums up the NFC South as a whole, man. I kind of made this comment earlier this season. I was like, I feel like the NFC South just doesn't have a lot of great coaches, as you say. There's a lot of just that coach is like, wow, that he's one of the best in the league. It feels like the NFC South just has a lot of very average coaches, and then it reflects in their teams because they're very average teams or below average teams, depending on how you view it. So
Right.
it definitely makes a lot of sense from that perspective as well. And just going back to the Falcons here for a second. So looking at this team, obviously the interview Arthur Blank did yesterday, he said playoffs isn't a requirement. Some people were kind of like, okay, you're in your third year. Why wouldn't that be a requirement there? And he said right now he wants the team to be competitive and it's mixed. Would you say this Sunday, first, what would you be your prediction for this Sunday against the Colts? And second, if the Falcons lose, does that effectively, in your opinion, just end this season for them? And then does that potentially seal Arthur Smith's fate?
Yeah, it kind of does, honestly. It's one of those where if they lose Sunday, you're kind of needing everybody else in the division to lose out at that point. And the Falcons have some control over that. The Falcons play the Saints in Week 18, so there's only 2 weeks left, and you can take care of one of those teams there. But you need a lot of help. The whole thing, I think like with 10 games left, it was like the Falcons didn't face a team with a winning record, which was really like, wow, they could really pull it off without even playing that great. And they've lost, 4 or 5 of those games already. So the idea that a lesser schedule, an easy schedule, would set them up made sense, but it also reinforces that they can't even really consistently beat mediocre opponents. Like the Saints are a team where the Saints, there's this clear line where the Saints are 6-2 against teams with losing records and 1-5 against teams that are 500 or better. And you kind of know that's the line. If you do this, if you do that, you know what you're getting. And again, the Saints' last 3 opponents are 7-7, 7-7, 6-8. So that could line up as more bad teams they can beat. With the Falcons, I think, unfortunately, they just lost to a 1-win Carolina team. So once you've done that, it kind of saps all the confidence in the room, where it's like you're not sure who they can beat. You're not sure what circumstances they can win under. That and the absence of, then they beat the Texans, which are a good team. They've beaten good teams. They've shown they're capable of that. It's just the inconsistency from week to week, the inability to stop their own mistakes. Those all work against them. So again, the Colts are a team that, wherein the Bucs probably got the quarterback decision wrong. Sorry, not the Bucs. The Falcons got the quarterback decision wrong in the offseason. Colts did really well on 2 fronts: in drafting Anthony Richardson and in spending $3.5 million to get Gardner Minshew, who's now led them to whatever it is, 5 wins in 6 games or something. To be able to continue to win with a backup quarterback. A lot of people talk about Shane Steichen as a coach of the year. If it's not D'Amico Ryans, it's probably him, for being able to push through that. I mean, they won Sunday and they didn't have Jonathan Taylor or Zach Moss or Michael Pittman. So to be able to overcome those kind of things and win, it certainly sets them up as the team to beat. It's not to say that Atlanta can't respond and Atlanta can't step up and beat a team like that. But the momentum of those 2 teams is going in 2 very different directions right now.
Yes, definitely. I agree with that, and we hope for the best. But I'm not going to keep you any longer, Greg. I appreciate you taking time out, coming on to the show, sir. Let people know where to find you real quick.
Yeah, everything I write is at foxsports.com. I'm on Twitter at my name, Greg Auman, Gregauman. Hit me up there. And we'll have coverage of the last 3 weeks here. I don't know where I'll be the last week, but I'll be here in Tampa with the Bucs the next 2 weeks, against the Jaguars on Sunday and against the Saints on New Year's Eve.
Yes, sir. Like I said, once again, thank you for coming on to the show, giving your insight on the NFC South and the Atlanta Falcons. And guys, you know what it is, your boy Bryce Lewis. We're going to obviously have a recap coming this Sunday after the Falcons game against the Colts, so definitely be there. But that's all we have for you guys. See you next time.